Good morning, everybody. It's your boy D Max. So let's talk. All right. So this is part two of what I was speaking about earlier, and that is the mental health of the United States. And what I want to do in this part two is I want to break down, well, I'm going to attempt to break down each one of those groups that I named, and I want to try to explain why they were created. So basically, they were created out of necessity. And what was that necessity? So we're going to go into that. This is what I'm going to attempt to do. So y'all just bear with me because, like I said, I don't write a script out or anything like that. I will write down basic names or basic words that I want to expound on those points. And that's what I'll do. And I'll just go from there, man, with whatever comes into my heart and my mind to speak. So I rely on the spirit to speak, man. And so that's what I'm gonna do right now. So now let's go over. We're going to recap the list that I spoke of in my previous video. So the first group was the Proud Boys. The second group was Black Lives Matter. The third group was Antifa. The fourth group was neo Nazis. The fifth group, the Republican Party. The sixth group, the Democratic Party. And if you want to, you can throw the Independent Party in there as well, because that's kind of like the political realm. There's an umbrella over those three. And I'll be discussing them because they have the same agenda. They just have different routes to that agenda. And so let's begin. Okay, so what I'm about to explain is what caused this group to come about. What caused this collective of people to feel like they had to come together and do something because they felt like something wasn't being done or the proper thing wasn't being done. And so I'll start with Proud Boys. So we know the Proud Boys, they started to pop up during the Trump administration, and we began to see a lot more of the white nationalists and white pride groups stand out during that administration. Just a fact. I'm not saying it to say that Trump brought these groups out. I'm saying that their presence became more familiar and more known during his administration, and they definitely stand for white power. They definitely stand for what this country was truly built on, and that is the preservation of the European group that they are descendants of. So we understand where their mental issue is coming from. They have this superiority complex. They have this insecurity of losing their ground and losing their status in the country that their people conquered and that they've definitely been in charge of for so long. And so that fear creates this anxiety and insecurity in them, in where they go into fight or flight mode, and they feel like they have to fight for the preservation of their group. And you'll see as I go down this list that this specific thing will also touch in other groups as well. So we see that they're fighting for the preservation of their kind. And they feel like if they don't do something and if they don't get out and spread the word and start to spark a match under their people, then they're going to see their specific ethnic group totally disappear. And no longer will the United States be under their single influence of power. And so we see that this is connected to power, insecurity, low self-esteem, and all of these things creates the Proud Boys. And this is just my view. These are my diagnoses on these people. So you can go and look up and see if you can match it up with anything in the medical or mental health books or whatever. But this is just my personal diagnosis on these people. So I'm going to put that disclaimer out there. Next group, BLM, Black Lives Matter. Now, the whole concept of Black Lives Matter began to ring out whenever we saw an increase in police brutality towards a specific group of people, which are typically your African Americans or your Hispanics. The seems the lighter your complexion gets, the more civil duty they show towards you. And so, because of this issue, we have a group called Black Lives Matter that was formed in the midst of this. We already had the NAACP, and they fought against the brutality as well. And it seems like Black Lives Matter kind of picked up the banner where the older generation left off. And so there's in all essence carrying the torch for the fight against police brutality and violence against black and brown people. And so this was created out of bullying. This is a necessity because of the bullying that has become so commonplace in the United States against our people, that we had to form a group. And this is not the first time. The Black Panther Party, I've spoke about this before, was created out of necessity because of the bullying and the brutality against our people in our neighborhoods by the police and outside militia groups who wanted to come in and harm our people when they felt like doing so. So we needed protection. We wasn't getting it from the people who were supposed sworn to protect, because oftentimes they were a part of those groups who were coming out to hurt us. And so out of necessity, we formed these groups. And BLM is no different, regardless of what you say about who's running it or who they're helping or anything like that. The fact of the matter of what I'm speaking on is what they were created out of. They were created out of necessity to speak against and fight against the bullying that's been taking place, whether it's against black people, brown people, gay people, whatever. There's been a very, very evident discrimination and persecution against people who aren't a certain way in this country. And we know that to be so. There's classism everywhere here. And so BLM was created essentially out of bullying. Next group I'm going to talk about is Antifa, or anti-fascist groups. These are groups that basically go against what they perceive as a tyrannical government, and they, kind of go with the concept of anarchy and don't believe the government, don't listen to the government, and we're going to try to stall their efforts whenever we can, and things of that nature. And it's more into Antifa than that. It's definitely a large organization. It is noticed and acknowledged by the government. So it's definitely got the respect of people in high places for their efforts and their coordination. So you can't take anything away from Antifa as a prevalent political or anti political group in this generation. And so they are accused of, sending agents into protests and causing a lot of mayhem and riots and things against the government. So Antifa was created also essentially out of a sense of bullying, because they feel like the government is misappropriating funds. They feel like the government is being deceptive towards the people. They oftentimes feel like the government is using people against the people, which they are. We see the division and the divide that is done through media in our country, so we can't deny that. And these are the things that Antifa were created to speak out or fight against. And like I say about every single group that I've spoken of here, you have people inside of those groups who do things that are not agreed upon by the collective of that group and may shed a bad light on that group. Some people do things that shed a good light on a group. But when you have a large organization, you can't micromanage every single person's actions. And so each one of these groups have their own issues. So the next group that I want to speak about and why they were created, neo-Nazis. Now, if you know anything about Operation Paperclip took place at the end of the war against Hitler. And during Operation Paperclip, the American government, the United States of America government, they they recruited about 1,500 Nazi scientists who were conducting experiments for Hitler and the Nazi Party, and these were your MK Ultras and things of that nature type of experiments. And so the United States brought these 1,500 scientists here to the United States, and they allowed those scientists to integrate into our society while also continuing their work for the United States. And so their ideology, their belief system, and all of those things came with them as well. Not just their scientific knowledge, but everything that they believed, everything that they were working for in that war came with them. So that spirit of the neo Nazism birthed itself right here in the United States out of necessity, because that whole Nazi party had just suffered their major crushing defeat. And they felt like, well, I'm not, like I said, I'm just diagnosing, giving my own view. In order to preserve our work, in order to preserve our cause, we're going to have to surrender and, basically work for our enemy, yet still towards our personal common goal. That's a self preservation thing that goes back to the fight or flight, and to once again bring my specific ethnic group back to a place of dominance. And it goes back to that whole mindset, because everybody knows that Hitler, one of his primary purposes was trying to create the superior race. And he was sorely upset when Jesse Owens blew the socks off of his runners at the Olympics. But so we know that that is a proven, documented fact, that that is one of the primary purposes of that party, is to preserve and exalt their ethnic group. So that's pride, that's self-esteem, insecurity. All of those things, once again, falls under the neo-Nazi group, and this is why it was created. So next you have the Republican, and like I said, Republican, Democratic, uh, grassroots, and independent party. All of these are going to fall up under the same umbrella. So I'm going to speak of them as one. Um, with our system, we are structured to be divided, yet we preach unity all the time. We even have unity in our moniker, the United States of America, yet we are systemically divided by everything that is written into our laws. And it's worded in such a way to where it says that all men are created equal, but there's always caveats to those types of bold statements that are proclaimed that exclude certain peoples, because they have to continue the exaltation of the conqueror of this land. And we talk so much, and we say so much negative stuff about the situation that we see in the United States, but we also fail to realize that any land that's been conquered, the conqueror is not going to exalt anyone over themselves. The conqueror and his people are going to be exalted over everyone else in the conquered land. That's how that whole entire thing works. And so I don't condone it. I don't condone it, especially not in the age of civilization that we are in now. But I understand it. And I understand their desire and their need to remain in the space of conqueror, because they don't want to give that up, because that's considered being conquered and being defeated. And so that's where we're going to go as far as the United States. The United States, Democrat or Republican or independent alike, we all have the same agenda. We want this utopian country that everybody wants to envy, and that we just have all of the excess of everything, and that we are the eye of the ball. And this comes through first with the Republicans. Their viewpoint on it is capitalism. Capitalism is going to give you position, is going to give you power, and it's going to give you authority. And with those things, you can definitely flourish and grow and see your people progress throughout this age and ages to come. So that's understandable. You want the preservation of this nation. And not only that, but you want it to excel and to grow. But in doing so, you you want everyone to still have their individual rights, but as we evolve, and as our society evolves, and as the mentality of people evolves, because remember, the premise of this is the mental health issues that our society is going through. Some of those things have to be adjusted, because now it does not hold true, and it does not stand effective in the time that we're living in. So with individual rights, then that's going to alienate certain groups, because now we have a lot of people in this country who are not citizens of this country. And so while we exercise our rights, they don't have the rights that other people will have, and they will be excluded on a lot of things. And excluding people from opportunities is going to cause some tension, and it's going to cause crime to go up. And so, out of necessity, hey, truth lady, blessings to you this morning, Queen. Good to see you. And so, out of necessity, people are going to start to commit crimes oftentimes to preserve their families and their people and their way of life. And so when we think about having our individual rights, say like the gun laws, for instance, everyone wants their right to bear arms. The purpose of that was they wrote that in so that we would be able to have a fair fight against a tyrannical government if it ever came down to another civil war. It would be a bloodbath if it's just one sided, and we would just have pistols as opposed to them having tanks and AR-15s and stuff like that. So the fight for gun rights is much deeper than just, they'll say it's just my God, my given right through the Constitution, my constitutional right. And in having that right, that's going to open up the door for some people with some mental health issues to be able to legally have guns. And this is what we see when we see a lot of these mass shootings. And these people were able to go and get their weapons legally, and there was nothing that could be done about it because they passed all criteria on paper. But nobody ever determined what their mental status was. And so, in exercising our individual rights to bear arms, you're still going to have some cracks in there, and that's where that issue comes from. And so, through the capitalism and the fight for power and the fight for individual rights that the Republican Party preaches and pushes, there's going to be a severe loss of life because of those issues that I just spoke about. And then on the Democratic side, they're really big on pushing social programming and being able to look out for the elderly and the people who are mentally challenged and disabled, because they definitely need the support and they need the help. And so in these socialist programs, while that sounds like a great thing, and that is a great thing that is needed, it's going to benefit the majority, but it's going to require you to give up individual rights. So it's kind of like the opposite of the Republican Party. Yeah, they're going to help out the people, but it's going to come at a cost. And we're seeing it right now. with the stimulus checks. The stimulus checks, they sound good to people who have financial crisis going on. It sounds good to people who feel like they have no other option to survive in this world other than to look to the government for assistance because they've been conditioned on getting government assistance their whole entire life. So we understand that there was already a large target group of people who had already been conditioned for relying on government assistance and were very willing to give up any of their personal rights and individual rights to get that assistance. And so this is what the Democratic side of it does. They still have the same agenda, the same end goal as the Republicans, because that's going to be total control over the people and the image of what they want America to be seen as pushed out in the forefront so they can get back in a position of power. Because remember, the United States is no longer the number one currency on the global money market anymore. I believe it's somewhere like I don't want to say Dubai, but somewhere over in that area, to where their monetary value is greater than that of the United States. It's just that it's not accepted worldwide, and that's the only thing that gives us an edge over that. But you know, yeah, these programs are going to require us to have to give up some of our individual rights, and the more you start to give up, the more you're going to see them want to take. And this pandemic that we are dealing with, this COVID pandemic, is absolutely showing us a prime example of that because people are starting out of fear of this COVID pandemic, out of fear of death becoming more of a reality to them. People are being scared into giving up rights. And that's where you're having all of this division coming from with the anti-vaxxers and the all of these different people because of fear that's been drummed up by the media and by other groups who have their own personal agenda. And so you have people who are capitalizing, like the pharmaceutical companies are now capitalizing, because I read a report a few days ago where they're designing a daily pill that you can take for COVID. So now it's going to be like aspirin. You can go get you some COVID pills from the grocery store or whatever. And so now pharmaceutical companies are definitely getting their capitalism popping on this because they're going to make money hand over fist because that's all they have to do is work in conjunction with the CDC, the WHO, and the FDA and say, oh, well, we need to up the dosages, and people need to take this because we have a influx of uh, of SARS-19. They can say whatever and drum up that fear again, and people are going to be out purchasing these medications, and so the pharmaceutical companies are still going to be making their money off of the fear of the people. And so we have to be careful about letting fear cause us to give up our individual rights. And so now you have the independent party, they're the ones who are on the fence. I kind of believe in some of these programs and I'm not going to commit to anybody in particular. You said ignorance is the low energy that's fueling the fear. Absolutely 100 nail on the head, my sister, because that's what they're banking on is the ignorance of the people. People are not going to go any further than two Google searches to validate whatever point they see or the narrative that's being projected to them. Nobody's going to really take a couple days worth of research and really go down a rabbit hole to satisfy that, you know, that sense of validation. So you're right. Ignorance is the low energy that's fueling the fear. And people are going to continue to wallow in their ignorance. And even if it's shown to them, they're going to deny it in order to keep that false reality that they've painted for themselves to keep them secure or their false sense of security intact. So those are the six groups that I wanted to break down this morning and give you the reason behind them being created in the first place. And this is the cause of the mental illness that these different groups suffer from. And so, as a collective, like I said from the beginning of the first video, we as a nation are mentally ill. And one of the first steps to recovery is admitting that you have a problem. So when we have people that are in powerful places who refuse to admit the fact that they have these issues because of fear of being seen as weak, then we are headed down a bad track, and we're going to have to make us a contingency plan as a people, because we see our government, they fall into the wayside because of the power scope. um Truth lady, I always appreciate you, sister, for coming in. Like I said, my circle is small and tight, but we are quality people. We have some understanding in things, and I appreciate every single one of y'all. um that's really all I have. I just wanted to do that caveat to the first video, because I felt like I really could have done a little bit more justice as far as breaking down each one of those groups and why they were created. But we see the mental health issues in our country. So what are we going to do about it? First, it starts at home and making sure that ours are sane and going out into this world and demonstrating what sanity is, as opposed to all of the insanity that they're going to have to deal with. So everybody have a great day. Be blessed. And don't be mad at the person. Be mad at the spirit that governs them. You know what I say? Sticks and stones can break your bones, but the truth can always heal you. I'm out.